Hey guys, so we are going to talk about perhaps one of the most famous cases about evolutionary science and natural selection specifically, and well, the case that started it all. So let's begin with 19th century, and there's this scientist called Charles Darwin that's sailing around South America, and he also discovers that there's also these bunch of islands called the Galapagos Islands. So as he explores the islands, he notices that there are a bunch of biomes around the area. There are tropical forests here, there's arid dunes here, and there's temperate forests here. Overall, these are biomes that are very unique, and with that, very unique species. So one of those unique species that he discovers are the finches. So um, what he knows about these finches are though they look very different from one another, subspecies in fact, they also act very similarly, and their physical characteristics are very similar to the finch he saw back at homeland in South America. So he notices all these finches, and he writes them down. And what he says about it, so about like natural selection, how they split off with one each other, that becomes the basis of evolution and natural selection. So, what are finches, you may ask? So, hold on, let me grab the picture. So, what are these birds here? So, these are omnivorous birds. They're very small birds, like inches, like less than a feet. So, these are small birds. They're omnivorous, meaning that they both eat plants and other species, not their own species, but other species. So they're omnivores. Their diet consists of mostly seeds and bugs that they poke around in the soil and leaves to grab them and eat them, or they can just eat the seeds from the grasses and trees that are found in the plants. So they also eat seagull blood, but we don't talk about that. Anyhow, they use their beak sizes, how they will either poke the bugs out or eat the seeds, or crushing the seeds. In fact, you need to crush the seeds in order to eat it. So that detail will become very important as we talk about it later. So how does this relate to natural selection in the first place? So let's take, for example, the main common ancestor that I mentioned back in South America. When they first migrated over and discovered these islands, they also noticed, oh hey, well, more likely than not, they stumbled upon they at least a bunch of them either went into the tropical forests there, or the arid dunes, or any kind of island here that harbors their own unique biome. So, uh, so with these different biomes, they have different food supplies. So let's take, for example, the arid dunes in one of these islands. I can't remember. So if a group of finches migrated to the dunes, hold on. Let me try to remember. Sorry. So if a group of finches migrated to the dunes of the islands, where it's normally has larger trees, and with that, it has larger seeds as the main food source. So those with a larger beak has more power to break that seed and therefore survive on it and such. While the birds with smaller beaks weren't able to break it, and they would either have two choices. They would either move out and look for a better place to live, or die trying and, die. So those large beaked finches were able to survive longer, and therefore they were able to have offspring. And those offspring were able to have larger beaks that allowed them to live. So therefore, the larger beaks and areas became the commonality around dunes. So that's that's how natural selection goes in the topic of these Galapagos finches. So let's take this a step further. Let's go to Daphne Major in 1976. So let's say this is our a common area. This is our Daphne Major forest. So we noticed that there are lots of finches that cohabitate that lives together. There are large beaked finches, and there's also small-beaked finches that both live together, like I said. Sorry. And they have these all sorts of seeds. They have the small seeds that they can eat, and they also have bugs that they can also eat. Same with the small beaked. But there's something that happens in 1977, and that's when a year-long severe drought hits the area, and it causes the vegetation to shrivel and die. And with that, it lowers the amount of vegetation, and it also lowers. It doesn't produce a lot of seed. Obviously, it doesn't produce a lot of seeds, and with that, the bugs are very scarce. So overall, the food source is very scarce in general. Sorry. So logically, the supply of small seeds and the bugs are used up because that's the general diet. So all of that stuff is dwindling away and they're gone. So now there's just with all that stuff gone, the only thing that's really left in the droughts are basically these big seeds here that fall from one of the trees that I also can't remember. And this is very important, so that these big seeds are very tough and it requires a lot of force to break it. So like I said before, the larger beaked birds are able to break the seeds and able to feed off of it, like the example I said in the beginning. And in the meanwhile, these small finches cannot break the seeds, and therefore they don't have anywhere to go, and therefore they die, sadly. So, with that said, with all the small beaked dying, they aren't able to live long enough to reproduce. But the larger beaked finches are able to reproduce. Here you go. Are able to reproduce and make offspring that can also make that also produces larger beaked birds. So sorry. So these beached, like I said, the larger beaked finches grew up long enough to reproduce, and therefore the physical trait was exemplified and therefore favored by the environment. So this is really an example of natural selection at its very core, and it's also an example of pressure selection, where the sudden shift, which was the drought, sudden shift of environment causes the shift of balance of physical varieties. So therefore, the larger beaks were favored, not unintentionally, because the larger beaks were by chance happened to have the larger beaks happened to be favored by the environment, while as the smaller beaks worked against the species that have them, and therefore they would perish during the drought. So overall, this is a really good case about natural selection, and overall, this is the main gist of it. So sorry about all that. Anyways, thank you for watching.